It's brand new. Don't touch anything. Yeah.
You better check on that too.
You gotta say Jerome Flowers.
Down like the village, I did a write-in.
Come on, Megan.
It's so tight up
They
here.
had Jerry.
Yeah, it is.
I know.
No, it's not too serious today.
That's fine. Yeah, better.
It was a little bit yesterday.
Yeah, because I would've said, you know, Gerald to get an order or something like that.
Yeah, so,
I'll try to grab you.
you know, I like being on the board. I think half the guys combined together or something.
You're at 12-7, looks to me like.
That one committee, I never made it to one.
I thought I saw it earlier, but I can't see it now.
One second.
What was the date of it?
You working on it again? Like around 15th or so? Let me see if I can get it.
Ah,
I remember that.
I guess you are a big shot. Is that it?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll put,
The 15th.
Megan can make a note that you'll be gone.
I think there was one person that
Must have deleted it.
Baltimore, huh?
something else.
Well, yeah, I
Whole site
figured.
visits.
I read it, but I guess
Budget total.
I'm surprised by the response.
Good.
Do you have,
I had to delete, I hit this.
I was worried about that.
Yeah, me too. I had a whole stack this morning in the.
you didn't
middle
just
of
put
the
it in like junk mail, did
Find
you?
it
Or
ever?
go in your deleted items, Pat.
Find it?
Looking for it. It's
Oh,
home.
okay.
Up there.
Got this, I don't need it.
Huh?
Got this, I don't need it.
Okay. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Megan will do roll call. Thank you, Megan.
Mr. Bonfiglio. Mr. Piaski. Mr. Tim.
Here.
Mr. Cap.
Here.
Mr. Eckstein.
Here.
Mr. Jarvis.
Here.
Mrs. Colada.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Peterman.
Here.
Mr. Lauer.
Here.
Mr. Kirschner.
Here.
Okay, we'll stand for silent prayer and pledge allegiance, please. Whoops, I'm sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sorry, I'm on my microphone. I'm sure it's Megan's fault. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as printed. Motion by Mr. Eckstein, second by Mr. Peterman. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed, same sign. We need an approval of the minutes of the December 17th, 2019 monthly meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Jarvis, second by Mr. Cap. Any questions? We did have one correction, and that was just to change it from Mark Hoke, who worked on the clock, to Mike, and it stopped working, and so he came and got it again. So, all right. Any other questions or comments concerning the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Public comments. We have no one who has signed in for public comments, so we'll go to unfinished business, which is the discussion and possible motion action item on the amendment of employment contract between the County of Waushara and Robert J. Civic to bring said contract into compliance with Wisconsin law. Motion by Mr. Eckstein, second by Mr. King. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. New business, we'll have reports and presentations, the first being the county administrator's monthly report.
It does work.
Mr.
Thank you,
Civic.
Madam Chair. A few things to report, and I know I'm going to be giving you my annual report in a few minutes, but I'm not going to be repetitive. I did want to inform the board and the public, for that matter, about a couple of things. This isn't something that's going to happen immediately, but it is going to happen certainly by the end of this year, probably late summer, early fall, and that thing is going to be the courthouse and the annex, or the old jail behind the courthouse, is going to be buttoned up to one point of entry. We should have done that 5 years ago, and it's something that we have to do in order to not only remain in compliance with standards, but the Wisconsin Supreme Court wants that to be done for judicial safety and for people who are here in the courthouse for business. That's the standard that you see in courthouses for other buildings that you've been into. That's what we're going to have to do. I would say, hopefully, and I'm not going to make a promise, but it's something that's being considered, that perhaps it will not be a permanent situation, because one of the other things that we're looking at is renovating our buildings, and I know Mr. Kirshner, Mr. Jarvis are on that committee as well. If one of the proposals that's being considered is to construct a separate courts or justice center building adjoining the jail, that would enhance security for the transport of prisoners. Right now, we put them in automobiles and bring them down here to the courthouse. That's a weak link in the chain as far as if prisoners escape. That's usually when they would do so, when they're being transferred out of the secure situation. That would allow easy and secure transport of prisoners. It would also allow us to secure any new courts building very, very adequately, and perhaps, and again, I'm not going to make a promise, perhaps we wouldn't have to have one point of entry here. The model that we looked at, and I know some folks were with me and the sheriff a few months ago, was Winnebago County. If you go to the Winnebago County Courthouse, it is tight as a drum, but the Winnebago County Board kept those court functions in one building so that the other buildings that the county uses for their other business can be more of open access, not only to benefit the public, but employees as well. So that's coming. I'm just giving you a sneak preview so no one says that this is a big surprise. Speaking of the buildings renovation project, I've met with representatives of architectural firms yesterday, today, and tomorrow as well. I'm very happy about that, because the RFP has not been out that long, and we are getting some good responses. Basically, we've met with them, kind of gave them the history of the situation. Overall, just broadly what our needs are, and we're turning these people loose with their expertise and their creativity, and hopefully we'll have some interesting proposals when that period is over and people submit proposals to us to consider. On Monday the 13th, myself and Deputy Clerk Lindsay Fuhrer were in Stevens Point attending a WCA seminar preparing for the county reorganization meeting that's coming up. So we've come up to date on that. I know I had to leave early, but Lindsay stayed for a portion of the seminar regarding apparently Eau Claire County has just a top-notch new supervisor and even continuing supervisor orientation program. So I haven't been able to touch base with her, but we will go ahead and take a look at that and see if that's appropriate for us. From Tuesday, January 14th to Thursday, January 16th, I was in Washington. I know the board received email from me on that, and I know the executive committee, I discussed that at that meeting, but just for members of the public, the genesis of this is about 2 years ago when myself, Chair Collada, Supervisor Kapp traveled to Washington at the invitation of the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. We had the kind of touristy tour of the White House, but we also had a full day of meetings next door at the Executive Office Building. There we had cabinet secretaries. I certainly remember Sonny Perdue, the Ag Secretary, members of the President's staff who discussed a number of issues, agriculture, related, and this was just for Wisconsin, agriculture, the opioid crisis, some other things as well. It was very informative. It was very heartening that the administration has been that responsive to people. I know that there's a lot of people who love Donald Trump, people who don't like Donald Trump for a variety of reasons, but I will say this, I believe credit should be given where credit is due, and some of you have heard me say this before, but I've been a local government official, both as a member of a governing body and local government staff during the tail end of the Clinton administration, the Bush, the Obama and now the Trump administration. And I never heard from the White House until Donald Trump moved in. So that meeting was not just a one and done deal. We also, the Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, about every 6 to 8 weeks, and you may have remembered me mentioning this in the weekly email message I give to you, has a conference call. And generally the people participate in that conference call, and it's geared towards particular regions, anywhere from 30 to 100 people, and it's on a variety of topics. The ones that I participate in were obviously the opioid crisis, because that's an issue here, but international trade and agriculture, which is what I'm very interested in, not simply because I'm interested in those subjects, because they greatly affect our county and our county's economy and our county's tax base. And as you may not surprise you, I have complained about the Trump administration's trade policies, because they've had a great adverse effect upon farmers here in Waushara County and our manufacturers in Wisconsin. I disagree with the president. Trade wars are not easy to win. Trade wars are not a good idea. Free trade does result in some individual losers, but overall it increases the wealth of the planet. It has brought literally billions of people into the middle class, people who now can afford to buy things that Americans produce, whether it's goods or services. And it also makes the world a more peaceful place, because you're less likely to bomb a trading partner, particularly if you own assets in that country. So I'm a firm believer in the free market and international trade. The president has a different attitude, but I would say, again, to give credit where credit is due, the USMCA, that's the United States, Mexico, Canada trade agreement, which replaces NAFTA, it pretty much is the same as NAFTA, but there were some improvements as far as domestic auto production and some reduction of barriers, particularly for Wisconsin dairy products in Canada. And I was very happy about that. But I was contacted about 2 weeks ago by the White House and invited to attend the signing ceremony for the U.S.-China trade agreement. So I accepted the invitation. I was out there. I really didn't know too much what to expect. I knew from news accounts there were going to be about 200 people in the East Room of the White House. That's the big ballroom. I was pleasantly surprised. Actually, the joke I told people was I never felt like such a failure in my life, because there were a number of people there who were out of my league: governors, senators, congressmen, ambassadors, cabinet secretaries, Fortune 500 CEOs, people from Wall Street. Henry Kissinger was there. So it was a nice group, and everybody was very friendly. It was a nice ceremony. This is phase one of the agreement. Is it going to solve all our problems with China? No, not by a long shot. But I will say this, and again, to give credit to the Trump administration where it's due, the tension level has ratcheted downward. The Treasury Department has taken China off the list of currency manipulators, which is a nice olive branch. In the trade agreement, currency manipulation is being addressed, and that's been a real problem with China for more than 2 decades. And theft of intellectual property is being addressed. One of the things that China had done is for American companies who want to sell in the China market, and everybody wants to, because you've got, I think, 1.2 billion people to sell to. One of the conditions of entering that market was you had to turn over your technology to the Chinese government, and that appears to be something that's addressed and it's no longer going to occur. Also, theft of intellectual property. I know a lot of people don't like Hollywood, but Hollywood is a real export engine, because the television programs and the films that they produce really bring in a lot of revenue from overseas, and a lot of those that intellectual property is being pirated. So that's also being addressed. So I was very happy about that. While I was in Washington, I wasn't going to just go to this one meeting. I had other meetings scheduled, including with our congressional delegation. I met with Congressman Grothman, Senator Baldwin, and members of Senator Johnson's staff. I discussed with them the issues that I wanted to discuss, because they have limited time. Was Medicare, the low Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement rates as it affects this county, but also rural Wisconsin and rural America. In a nutshell, what happens is, particularly in this county that's relatively poor, a lot of medical services or nursing home services are paid for either through the federal Medicaid program, which is for the poor, or the Medicare program, which is for the elderly, and the rates have not increased. They certainly don't reflect the market, and you may have heard from Mr. Donaldson, our EMS director, when he gave his report, I think a month or two ago. Also, for the ambulance service that we provide, we get Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement. It is not anywhere near the market rate, and what the end result of that is, rural hospitals all over the country are closing, nursing homes are closing. The nursing home in Wild Rose just recently closed. I sent you an article, and I'll just say this to the public. There was an article in the Washington Post in late December that I sent to the board, and I believe I sent it to the directors. I don't remember, but it was about a nursing home closure in rural Nebraska, in a community that I'm familiar with. And I'm sure we have the same situation here in Wild Rose. These people are not being thrown into the street, but they are being relocated elsewhere, and their loved ones, who tend to be elderly, particularly spouses who do not have the ability to move around very easily, then are not able to visit that person as easily or frequently as possible. A lot of these folks in these nursing homes are suffering from dementia. I don't know if Ms. Pavla is here, but people who are suffering from dementia, they need continuity, they need stability, and when you uproot them and you move them, they don't understand what's going on, and they begin to decline very rapidly. So it's not just a fiscal matter, it's a humanitarian matter. So I complained to both the Republicans and the Democrats about that. I discussed the need for high-speed internet here in Waushara County, not just because so you can binge watch stuff on Netflix, but also it's an economic development hamstring to us, because the way the modern economy is, internet access is very important to doing business, and it also affects us and other employers here in Waushara County, because young people, that's one of the things they check out. You know, when you went out and bought a house, you checked out the public schools in the neighborhood. People still do that, but young people are now looking at what the available internet is and what the speed is, and that's a factor in their decision whether or not to take a job or move to the community. So I'm back from Washington, back to regular business. Just a few other things I want to touch on. The census is coming up. Talked about that. We are moving forward on that. Please promote the census. Please get people to respond to the census. It's very, very critical to this county and our ability to obtain federal and state funding. Coming up Wednesday, January 28th, Chairperson Collada and I will be meeting with the Waushara County Fire Chiefs. I met with them a few months ago. This is something that we're undertaking here in the courthouse. The county doesn't have fire service, but nevertheless, we do work with the fire departments throughout the county in terms of EMS and emergency management. And I tend to get isolated because I don't know what's going on with the fire departments, because I don't see them day to day. But we're meeting with the chiefs to see what their concerns are. That's part of the cultural change we have, where we do outreach to our local government partners. On Tuesday, February 4th, and Wednesday, February 5th, Mrs. Collada and I will be in Madison for the Wisconsin Counties Association annual legislative conference. I went to it last year. It's a very good conference. A lot of the legislative leaders that we complain about or we try to get a hold of, they are there in that room, and they're captive, and they will take questions. And I know Mrs. Collada and I will probably be rude and ask difficult questions, but that's our job. That's what we do. And finally, on Friday, February 7th, I will be traveling to Madison again for the meeting of the Wisconsin County Utility Tax Association, as I like to call it, the world's most boring organization. But we are looking at reconfiguring the formula. Utilities don't pay real estate taxes. They make payments in lieu of taxes. That revenue stream was supposed to go to local government for infrastructure to enable utilities to get back up and running in the event of disasters such as ice storms or whatever. That revenue has slowly been diverted to the state coffers. So we're taking on that issue. We've been meeting with some legislatures, making some headway, and hopefully we would not only just address the issue with the utility revenue stream, but other revenue streams as well. The state ties our hands with regard to revenue, yet they're always telling us to do more and more things. So, and that leads me to my last item on the agenda, which is a sad item. Nobody died, but as you know, back in November, our district attorney, Steve Anderson, left us to take a job with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Madison, where two district attorneys ago, Scott Blader is now the the U.S. Attorney for the Western District of Wisconsin. So Steve is down there working for Scott. Because we had the vacancy, that vacancy pursuant to Wisconsin law is filled by the governor. He makes an appointment. Our district attorney and I spoke to Barry at somewhat length today and received his permission to disclose this. He obviously applied for the position. He had an interview with the governor in December, received an email on Friday informing him that the governor would not appoint him, and that the position would be re-advertised in February. And this is what I'm talking about when we don't treat our top people well. Barry is going to be leaving us and taking a position as an assistant district attorney in Racine County, which is where he came from. So we are, when we had Steve here, we had one vacant ADA position we were trying to fill, and then Steve left, and then we had 2 vacant positions to fill, and very soon, within the next couple of weeks, we'll have 3 vacant positions to fill. Barry told me that the way that this will be handled is he's been in contact with the State Department of Administration. There will be probably a special prosecutor assigned to Waushara County, and we'll have to see what shakes out. I'm very disappointed in the situation, but that's what we're just going to have to deal with. So we struggle with a lot of things. We'll be talking about a Second Circuit judge later on tonight, but we're trying to keep the criminal justice system in Waushara County from collapsing. But it is a tough task. So that's all the news I have. Thank you, Mrs. Collada.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have the Clerk of Circuit Court's Office Annual Report. Ms. Zamzow.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I am Melissa Zamzow. I am the Clerk of Court here in Waushara County. So I'll give you a recap of 2019 and looking forward to 2020. So the Circuit Court and Clerk of Court's office are comprised of Judge Dutcher, Rebecca Gramps, who is the Register and Probate, Tara Gulbranson, who is a certified court reporter, myself, Katrina Rasmussen, who is my Chief Deputy and also handles criminal and traffic matters within the office. Tracy Piancikowski-Girian is a Deputy Clerk, and she handles the civil small claims and our jurors. Stacy Engel is a Deputy Clerk who does collections and finance, and then Katie Sullivan came from the Sheriff's Department. She is a Deputy Clerk handling family and paternity matters. In our office, currently we have a 1.5 judge workload. With only 1 judge. With the district attorney leaving, there's some concern about filings in our office and how that is going to address the weighted caseload that they use to determine judgeships needed. However, we do know that we have 3 DA positions open, and at some point someone's going to have to handle those cases. The departments that interact with the Circuit Court and Clerk of Court's office, many of them are obvious, such as law enforcement, which includes the Waushara County Sheriff's Department, State Patrol, Village of Coloma, Village of Plainfield, any municipal violations that have a criminal charge attached. So if someone has a broken tail light and then they are arrested for an OWI second, if they're stopped in the city of Wautoma, both of those, both the criminal charge and the the light violation come to the Clerk of Court's office for filing to be handled by Judge Dutcher. So in 2019, our office had 3,422 traffic violations, 354 ordinance violations, and 59 juvenile ordinance violations, such as tobacco, truancies, things of that nature. The zoning department interacts with our office when they file septic system violations for people who do not have their septic system pumped every 3 years as required by law. They file the citations with our office, and usually those are in October and November, and we usually get around 300 citations from them for that. Then, of course, there's the district attorney's office who files the criminal, felony, misdemeanor violations. In 2020, we implemented the CT, which is a criminal misdemeanor, but it is a traffic-related crime. So The district attorney's office handles those violations from the initial charging to disposition of matters, and they also include the juvenile delinquency actions. So including misdemeanors and criminal traffic violations, we had 430 cases filed in our office last year, 259 felonies, and then 30 juvenile delinquents. Other departments that interact with our department is the Corporation Counsel. She works very closely with both Human Services and Child Support to file cases with the court, along with prosecuting zoning matters. The Corporation Counsel, Ruth, does a really good job of helping us with collection of accounts that we're unable to turn over for collections, such as we don't have a driver's license, a social security number, things of that nature. Ruth helps us bring them into court and collect those monies. Human Services, we have economic support workers, social workers, the crisis workers are working with the circuit courts. That is more with the register and probate, with the ME, which are mental commitments. GN cases are guardianships. JCs are juvenile CHIPS cases, or children in need of protective placement. TPs, we had 6 of them last year where they terminated parental rights, and then 15 adoptions, which is the AD case type. We also work very closely, or interact very closely, with the Child Support Agency. They file support and maintenance and paternity adjudication actions. Again, Ruth is the prosecuting agency on those. We had 132 family cases, which include divorces and support and maintenance, and then we had 44 paternity actions. So we interact with other departments within the building. The Register of Deeds office actually, when a foreclosure happens and the matter proceeds to a sheriff's sale, part of the law now requires the clerk of court's office to file the report of sheriff's sale along with the supporting documents such as the deed and the register's fees directly with the Register of Deed. We can no longer send it to the party that successfully bidded on the property and bought it. We file name change, or when name changes are done, they are directed to file that with the Register of Deeds, because we only have to keep certain records for a period of time. Sometimes people change their names and have to come back to the court to get a copy, and if they don't file with the Register of Deeds, if our record retention has gone, we don't have that record that they ever changed their name. So then there's also corrections and delayed filings of birth or marriage certificates. With the new requirement for the real ID, we are seeing an influx in phone calls to our office for people looking for a court order to file a delayed marriage or birth certificate for people that their pastor or for some reason the hospital never filed them. The treasurer's office we interact with at month-end time when we're doing the month-end reconciliation. They cut the check to the state treasurer on behalf of the circuit court. For the county clerk, we work with them in helping people when they're looking for getting their marriage licenses and they have a prior divorce. They need to have that document in order to prove that they're eligible to apply for a license and get married. Also, the county clerk's office, we work closely with them to create information in Springbrook for us to process our vouchers for payments of attorneys and things of that nature. So other entities that interact with the circuit court, we have attorneys, pro se litigants. Attorneys can file any of the following case types. We prefer or direct people when they're filing a civil action because of the amount that is at stake in a civil action to contact an attorney. We had 195 of those cases. Small claims, we had 419, and that is replevant actions or money judgments up to $10,000. People are able to file probate cases on their own, so when a parent or spouse passes away and they have assets that need to be transferred, you can file a probate case on your own, and the Register and Probate Association has a wonderful handbook on the wicourts.gov website that kind of walks people through how to file an informal probate. Attorneys are also involved in a lot of our divorce cases. You can proceed for divorce pro se. However, you are taking the responsibility to know the law and know what you need to file. Our office can help guide you with what needs to be done, but we can't give you legal advice as we're not attorneys. So pro se litigants proceed without counsel and they're able to file wills, probate. The JD case type is a John Doe. We usually get those out of the prison here in Waushara County where an inmate believes that something was improperly done at the prison and they want an investigation. They want the court to direct the district attorney to do an investigation. So we had 2 of those case files filed in 2019. So along with those 2, there's probate, family, small claims, and the civil cases that pro se litigants can file are injunction actions for domestic abuse, harassment, child abuse, those types of things. They can come to the court. We have fill-in-the-blank forms that kind of walk them through that process and how to do that. The other types of cases that we have in our office are TWs or tax warrants from the Department of Revenue, OLs or other liens that are placed against people or property. A foreign judgment, the FJs, we've had 3 of those. That is where a judgment from another jurisdiction is filed with our office and they want the court to enforce that judgment against them. A WC is a workman's comp lien, so someone who's been overpaid their workers' comp. The state files a lien with our office until it's paid and then they can satisfy that. The CLs are construction liens, so people that have work done on their house and they don't pay their contractor can place a lien against their property. We had 12 of those last year. The GF files, which we had 17, those range everything from appointments of special prosecutors, oaths of the sheriff's department, search warrants that are executed and filed with my office, town ordinances that are adopted by the local townships, those get filed in my office. Transcripts of judgment originate from small claims and civil cases where a person has a judgment in another county, but they may own property here in Waushara County. The plaintiff can file a transcript of judgment to put that lien against their property here in Waushara County. So not only do they have the judgment in the county where they got it, but they also have a lien against the property here in Waushara County. So we had 35 of those last year, and then the 31 UCs are unemployment claims. So if you're overpaid unemployment, they can place a lien against you until you pay that money back. So in 2019, my office collected $1,580,965.99. That darn penny. Of that, Waushara County retained $454,057.06. We sent to the state of Wisconsin $882,501.89. There was $244,407.04 that was distributed to other sources, or they remain in deposit accounts in the clerk of court's office. So of that $454,057.06, that part of that money was reimbursement for attorneys that the county had paid for to represent either children in contested family cases or dean appointments for defendants who don't qualify for public defender but also have charges serious enough that the court would appoint them an attorney. We recouped $54,870.89 in guardian ad litem fees. And for attorneys for dean appointments, it was $38,817.26. In 2019, we implemented a text message option for people to get notice 2 days before any court hearing that they needed to come to court. Unfortunately, people choose to ignore them or still don't come to court because we received $14,570 in bail forfeiture money, which is defendants that have a cash bond on file and they don't appear in court. The judge orders that cash bond forfeited, and then they're given 30 days to make contact with the court to say why they didn't come to court, and if they don't, then that money is forfeited and becomes part of the county coffers. Of the largest amount that we sent to the state of Wisconsin, my office sent $127,644.65 for DNA testing. Included in that $244,000, we paid out $33,152.72 to victims, and then $52,064.91 has been refunded to payers that have paid money to our office, whether it be a traffic ticket that was dismissed or refunds of bond posted after fines, costs, and restitution have been taken out. So in 2020, we are looking at the following initiatives. This is a picture of our large courtroom, which is our jury courtroom. And where the gentleman with the tie is sitting is where Tara, our court reporter, currently sits. We will be having a meeting next week with both IT Buildings and Grounds, our computer system, CCAP, and Judge Dutcher, Tara, and myself to talk about the DAR installation in both courtrooms. And the equipment is provided, the DAR equipment is provided by CCAP, but the reason why this is being done is because there is a huge shortage of court reporters or stenographers that are working in the court system and overall in that profession. So the DAR installation allows for a digital audio court reporter to come and do court reporting in the courtroom, but it's recorded and then they can listen to it afterwards and transcribe it to make sure that they have everything correctly. We are continuing to backscan old case files for retention purposes, and as of the end of the year, every case type that you saw me talk about in my presentation is a mandatory e-file case type. So if you are an attorney, you have to mandatorily file that through the electronic filing system. And then the last thing that we are continuing to do is cross-train staff to make more efficient use of all of our time as we go forward. And once we hopefully get 3 DAs and maybe a second judge, we'll be able to continue to move on. Any questions?
With that DAR reporting, or
Yes.
the recording, does that affect the flow of court at all? Or if an attorney needs to reference something that was said earlier, is that, you see that, it's probably movie perception versus reality perception, but oftentimes you say, could you read that back to me, or could you, sort of tell me what was said earlier?
It actually is a recording, so we will have specialized microphones throughout the courtroom that will pick up every sound that is made. We have them right now. They were county purchased they were purchased 10 years ago and upgraded 3 years ago, but we have them in both of the courtrooms, and we utilize them now when for bond hearings or things of that nature to give Tara a break when she's been reporting all day. You can go in and you can rewind that recording to a certain point and then play it back so that everyone can hear it. Yes.
Thank you.
Sure.
If someone wanted to be a court reporter, is that a tech school?
It is.
It is.
Yep. There are a couple of tech schools in the state that offer it. I don't know if Fox Valley is one. I know there's one on the western side of the state. I know that the Director of State Courts has really been working with the technical schools to create programs even for digital reporters, because even if you're a digital reporter, you're not as fast as a certified reporter, but you can work your way to being a certified reporter and stay within the system. And we have some judges in our district now that only have digital court reporters, and so they're not able to come and help us with our caseload because we don't have the equipment for their reporter to use.
So I assume probably that's why there is a shortage, if not enough tech schools are carrying that.
I think that could be it. I think that a lot of court reporters have propriety rights over their work, and so they don't really share what they do as a profession. So I think that there hasn't been, a lot of people don't know that that's something that they can go into.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Very good report.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Very good report.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Missy. All right, next we have the Administration Department Annual Report, Mr. Robert Civic.
Okay, we're ready to go. This is my third report to you, and I try to make them a little different every year. Not that I think there's anything wrong with giving a data-heavy report that many of the departments do, but being the administration, I think it's important that I kind of give you a broader overview of where we want to go. There is a definite plan for, at least I have a definite plan for Waushara County, and I wanted to talk about that. In recent months, there's been some increased conflict between some members of the board or the board itself and the administration or myself. And I met with a few supervisors in my office a few weeks ago. And what I told them, I'll go ahead and tell all of you and tell the public. I don't think that the increase in conflict is because I've necessarily changed or because my plans have necessarily changed. When I came in here, I had a 5-year plan to get this county to where it should have been when I arrived in 2017. And I don't think any of you have changed. I think what's changed is we've already harvested the low-hanging fruit. We made the easy, no-brainer changes, and now we're getting into tougher issues. And a lot of the conflict is not just because we're getting the tougher issues, but because I think there's a lack of understanding of what we're all supposed to do here. When I was at the WCA conference with Lindsay about a week and a half ago, John Hockemer gave a presentation, as he usually does. And you may recall that Hockemer gave us all a presentation in July of 2018 when we were meeting at the operating engineers. I'm going to have him come back because it is a good presentation, but we'll probably do that after the new board is in place. I believe that the biggest problem facing humanity is a lack of understanding or a lack of education. So I think a lot of the conflict may also be that the folks don't know what we're supposed to do, and that's, I think, been particularly exacerbated because for decades we did one thing, everything particular one way, and now with the new form of government, we're doing it different ways, not just because I'm different and I have my own agenda, but also because the board no longer has managerial authority. So we'll kind of go through that a little quickly, and then we'll talk about what we want to do, or at least what I'm proposing we do in the future. First thing I want to talk about is my role here as the administrator. And just to give you some background of how we got to where we're at, on Tuesday, December 20th of 16, you, and I know it wasn't all of you, some of you weren't on the board at that time, but unanimously approved Resolution 321216, which created the position of Waushara County Administrator. Some background on that. In local government in the United States for more than a century, the trend has been to move from elected officials managing local governments to appointing professional managers. That's also been the trend here in Wisconsin. Hockemer will probably talk about the fact that in Wisconsin counties, the trend has been steadily from the administrative coordinator form of government to the administrative form of government. And for those who don't know, the administrative coordinator form of government is where you have an administrative coordinator, but the county board, the supervisors retain the day-to-day management authority. The administrative coordinator is more or less like my administrative assistant, Michelle. I tell her what to do, and then she goes ahead and carries it out, makes phone calls, whatever she has to do. That's not the form of government we have anymore. We have one where you hired me to go ahead and manage the day-to-day affairs of the county. And I'll even go further. I was, at that time, I was looking to make a move from my previous position in Oregon, and I was considering a number of offers. I accepted this offer, and I don't think it's inappropriate for me to say that this was not the highest paying offer that I was looking at. But the reason why I came here is because I was very much impressed with the board, and that what they did was they voluntarily abdicated or surrendered authority to a professional. And that's very, very rare when it comes to elected officials. Please don't take this personally, but a lot of people get elected to public office and they assume by virtue of the fact that they won the election, that somehow makes them genius and an expert of everything under the sun, and in fact it does not. But it's very hard to get people to accept that maybe somebody can do the job better than them. And I would also say that some of the places I was looking at in northern Illinois, there were a number of cities in northern Illinois that were transitioning from a commission form of government to a city council manager form of government, and that was brought about by the situation you had in Dixon, Illinois, where you had basically the city council was running the city supposedly, but they had a comptroller or a finance director who was over the course of 20 years stealing more than $50 million, and that was a result of poor oversight and the fact that the city council wasn't actually managing the place. And that triggered a number of cities in northern Illinois to follow suit and to change their form of government. And the reason why I bring that up is I actually interviewed with a city in northern Illinois where the voters had forced that change upon them. I wasn't interested in the job because there was a great deal of resentment amongst the elected officials that authority was being taken from them. But contrarily, what we had here in Waushara County is the county board went ahead and voluntarily relinquished that authority, and that very much impressed me because that is rare, and that's why I came here. On Tuesday, March 21st of 17, you appointed me unanimously as the county administrator, and I took office in May. I don't remember the exact date. I know it was right before Memorial Day, so in late May. So let's talk about what I'm supposed to do pursuant to Wisconsin law. And I know this type is rather small, and we're not going to go through this word by word. This is just kind of the highlights. But in 5918, paragraph 2, you have the county administrator shall be the chief administrative officer of the county. The county administrator should take care that every county ordinance and state or federal law is observed, enforced, and administered within his or her county if the ordinance or law is subject to enforcement by the administrator or any other person supervised by the administrator. And some of you may have noticed that I'm a real stickler for us to obey the law. I'm not the person who's going to be prosecuting people. Quite frankly, after Barry left, we don't know who's going to be doing that. But I'm not the corporation counsel. But it is my job as the administrator to ensure that we follow the law, not only for the county but for individual county employees or members of the county board. We do that not because we're worried that somebody's going to take us away and put us in prison. We do it because it's the right thing to do. We're the government. We're the people who make laws. The least we can do is set a good example. So that's why I'm such a stickler, but also because the Wisconsin law requires that I do so. Second paragraph is coordinate and direct all administrative and management functions of the county government, not otherwise vested by law in boards or commissions or in other elected officers. So I worked in municipal government and in county government. County government is by far the more difficult because I'm responsible for the county, yet there's a number of department directors that I have no direct authority over, one of which was Missy, who just spoke. Missy's elected. So the way I have to handle Missy is a little bit more diplomatically. I do have, I guess, some bargaining power in that I administer the money, and as we know, money makes the world go around, and different policies. But there's a number of department directors that are led by elected officials that I don't have direct authority over. There's a number of other ones that I do have direct authority over. But basically, my job is to run the day-to-day affairs of the county government, unless it's otherwise by law vested in boards or commissions. In this situation, because we made the switch to the county administrator form of government, for the most part, that authority is vested in me, and it's my responsibility to do that. The third paragraph talks about department heads that I appoint them. As you know, I haven't appointed a lot of them, but when we have those, they come before you for confirmation. A good analogy to that would be my appointment authority is not unlike, say, the president or the governor appointing a department director, and your authority is to confirm that appointment or reject that appointment. So that's what our respective roles there. What we have every month we have something on the agenda as far as the various committees and commissions that we have, and I make appointments for them as well. And so far, you've gone ahead and approved every one of those. So I also have authority over the department directors. I appoint them, but I can also go ahead and dismiss them if their performance is unsatisfactory. I appoint members of boards and commissions that we just talked about that. The third paragraph, I submit the annual budget. Now, on that point is my job is to crunch the numbers and present something to you, but ultimately the annual budget is your prerogative. You decide whether or not you want to go ahead and move money around. You can decide to start all over again because you have the power of the purse. And in that situation, you decide how much or how little different functions we have, how well they're funded. The last paragraph, and I don't worry about disclosing this because people need to know, is that I've heard people say that I make all the decisions around here. I do make all the management decisions, but I am not somebody who is unaccountable. So in that situation, if just 6 of you decide that you want me to leave for any reason or no reason at all, you can go ahead and do so. I joke that I probably have less job security than anybody, certainly in this building, perhaps anybody in the county. Okay, then we come to you, and this is your role and the role you play here in Waushara County as members of the Board of Supervisors. And again, this is a little dense, but these are the highlights. The first paragraph is, you have the authority to exercise organizational or administrative power subject only to the Constitution and any enactment of the legislature which grants the organizational or administrative power to a county executive county administrator. And the point I'm making there is normally the county board runs the county except when the law says that they don't. You have 3 options for county government here. You chose the middle one, the county administrator. So what that means is you went from a situation in 2016 and early 2017 where you managed the county to one now where you do not. You've gone ahead and granted that authority to me. And the reason why I bring that up is that's not something that's advisory. It's either you're doing it or you don't. If you don't like the situation with me administering the county or exercising managerial authority, you can very well just go back to the administrative coordinator form of government and re-grab or take that authority back. You go ahead. The second one is actually the big authority you have. You can levy taxes and appropriate money to carry out the board's powers and duties. You have the power of the purse. That's probably the most important thing you do. And you also have the power to tax. That's the most important thing you do day to day, and that's actually how you probably have the greatest effect. The third paragraph, you can read that on your own. I threw that in there because that is going to become an issue later on this year as we talk about renovating the building. So you have the authority to go ahead and build buildings, renovate buildings. You have the authority to borrow money, things of that nature. The other thing I wanted to point out is you have the authority to make laws. Ordinances, county ordinances, and you have the authority to express your opinion or your position on certain things, which you generally do through resolutions. But I did want to emphasize one thing, and I've kind of gone over this before, and I don't want to turn this into a law school class, but the county of Waushara really doesn't have any inherent authority. This county is a political subdivision of the sovereign, the state of Wisconsin. The authority resides in the sovereign. There are some local governments throughout the United States that have some inherent authority, but not here in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's a Dillon's rule state. Dillon was a federal judge, and Dillon's rule means that this county only has, and political subdivisions only have authority that sovereign, the state, grants to them. So my point is that you can go ahead and enact laws, but only if the state of Wisconsin allows you to do that. And a good example would be if you decided you wanted to enact a law that said no Lutherans are allowed to live in Waushara County. You wouldn't be able to do that because it's unconstitutional. Or if you went ahead and you decided that you were going to, for instance, form your own treaty with Canada or Mexico or China, you wouldn't be able to do that because that's the exclusive purview of the federal government. You can go ahead and pass resolutions. You can say you're in favor of this, you're in favor of that. In fact, we're going to do that later on tonight with the issue of the second judge. But I wanted to make it clear to you that your authority is limited, and it doesn't matter if it's unanimous that you want to do something. It doesn't matter if someone tells you you can do it or someone is silent and doesn't tell you you can do something. Your authority is limited. And I'm saying this because I'm going back to what I said earlier. My first duty is to ensure that we do things in compliance with the law. So I want you to know that I'm not, when I tell you no, it's not because I want to be difficult. It's because we need to do that. The law is mandatory. It's not permissive. Okay, so let's talk about our journey into the future. As I said, my role here and my goal here is not just to collect my paycheck until I get old enough and I can retire. My goal is, and I'm not exaggerating when I say I want this to be the best run, most effective and efficient county government in the state of Wisconsin. I don't know how to be mediocre. I am mediocre in a lot of things, but that's never been my goal in anything. If I can't do something well, I find somebody else who can. And my goal here for Waushara County is to make this the best county government we could possibly have, or at least a county government of this size. I don't know if you agree with me on that. If you do, that's great. If you don't, we need to reevaluate our situation here. So let's talk about what we want to do in the future. If you want to know where you're going, the first thing you have to do is you have to know where you came from. So this is where we have been. I came here, the first time I set foot in Waushara County was in March of 2017. I was here for about 4 days. I joke that that period was the courtship where Waushara County and myself were deciding whether or not we wanted to get married. And I met with department directors and a number of other people. And then I came here in May of 2017 to begin work full-time. And there were a couple of things that I found very, very striking. And I interviewed, not formally interviewed, but met with department directors, met with some of the rank and file employees. And a constant complaint I heard was that people didn't know who their boss was. They had a situation where they had senior staff telling them what to do. They had individual members of the county board telling them what to do. They had county board committees telling them what to do. They had the county board itself. They even had lay members of committees telling them what to do. And oftentimes those directives were conflicting. And I will tell you, if somebody who's been around the block and has dealt with employees, when employees are not sure what to do, they cope by doing as little as possible. And they do that not because they're lazy, but because they want to survive. And they don't want to make anybody angry. And that was the attitude amongst the rank and file employees. And it was the attitude, perhaps not knowingly, but it certainly was the attitude as far as the overall management of the county went, which is why we've fallen so far behind and why we're taking up things like renovating these buildings. Because it's always easier not to do something than to do something. And I will tell you, it's always better for somebody in my position to lay low and to not make waves, because that way you get to go ahead and keep your job. But if you want to accomplish things, you do have to make waves, crack eggs, or whatever you want to call it. And that's what we're trying to do. We can't please everybody. The other thing that I noticed was we had a disregard for best practices. We had an absence of critical thinking and carrying out decisions. We really had an absence of long-term strategic planning. And we had a lot of decisions that were penny-wise but pound-foolish. The one that really just drives me nuts is when I came here, I found out the employees weren't allowed to plug in their cell phones because apparently 15, 20 years ago, there was an incident where somebody had a diesel automobile and they plugged in the engine block to a county outlet, and somebody complained about that. And instead of just addressing that directly, we went ahead and engaged in overreach, where employees were banned from using any personal devices for theft of county electricity. And I met with some people, and they were very tearful, telling me incidents where on a day like today with cold weather, bad weather, they may have had their cell phone battery dying because they forgot their car charger or whatever it may be. And they were worried about going home, whether or not their cell phone was going to be able to be operational if they got into an accident or went to the ditch or the weather was bad or whatever. And I went ahead and looked at that and thought, If we had every employee plugging in a cell phone every day, all day, we probably would save, I don't know, $100, $150 a year in electricity, but we ended up doing probably $500,000 in damage, in ill will with the employees. So we got rid of that, and there's a lot of other things that we need to do. It's easy to take the penny wise but pound foolish method, because it's always easy to say we're going to forbid the employees from plugging in their cell phone because that electricity is being paid for by the taxpayer. And my response to that is, when I've talked to staff and talked to managers, is if somebody complains about that, send them to me, and I'll go ahead and handle that and explain that actually it's good management to let people do things like that. And this is where we're at now, or where we're getting to. We have an expectation of excellence rather than hope for mediocrity amongst employees and amongst managers. And I wanted to touch on that. One of the things that's been brought up is that I sometimes treat employees differently, or my expectations for employees are different, and they are in fact different. We employ a number of people who do a variety of things. Right now, it being wintertime, we have people whose job in the wintertime is to plow snow. My expectations and the standards for somebody who's hired by the highway department to plow snow is this: show up to work, get in the truck, plow the snow, try not to kill anyone or do any damage to property, or at least unnecessary damage to property. That's it. That's all I want from that person. But as we move up in the food chain, as we move to positions that have more responsibilities, such as social workers or medical professionals, and certainly senior management, and even at the very upper tier of what we have here in the county, which would be me, which would be the finance director, which would be the lawyer, those standards are much higher because the responsibilities are much greater, and somebody who isn't performing can do a great deal more damage to the organization overall. So yes, the expectations for someone who's sweeping floors or plowing snow is less than somebody who's heading a department or handling $44 million a year. That's not playing favorites. That's simply looking at what people are doing, and if you move up in the food chain, things get more difficult, perhaps because you're taking on a responsibility. My expectation is that everyone here is a servant leader, that they lead, but also that they understand that their job here is not just a job, but their job is to serve the public. And I can't think of any more honorable thing to do, way to make a living, than to serve the people, even people who may not understand what you're doing or may not understand why you're doing certain things. We have collaborative but strong leadership and management style. On that note, the directors meet monthly behind closed doors. The public is not welcome. You're not welcome. We're not subject to open meetings laws. And the reason why we meet privately is because I want those meetings to be very free. I want the department directors to speak their mind. I want them to even speak their mind regarding me, to be critical of me, because I'm not perfect, and I know some of you have spoke your mind to be critical of me. I want to hear that sort of thing is useful. But when we leave that room and a decision is made, and oftentimes it's a decision by me, I expect everybody to fall into line. I will consider all the different options or all the opinions, but when a decision is made, we speak with one voice. So that's collaborative, but also a strong leadership and management style. Otherwise, what you have is you have chaos. You have a bunch of people voicing their opinion or their desire that may be contrary to the administration. Some of you may have witnessed situations where we've been in committee meetings where I'll have an employee, a subordinate employee, who will go ahead and ask members of the committee about something or plead for their assistance in something, and I get very irritated by that, because the employees work for me, they don't work for you, and any problems they have or any complaints they have, they need to take that up with me. That's not because I'm a megalomaniac and I want all the power in the world. That's because it's efficient to have somebody in charge, to have a clear chain of command, so the people know where they're at. They know they can speak freely, but when a decision is made, that's the way it is. And I'm looking around this room, I see Mr. Bonfiglio, Mr. Kapp, I know Mrs. Collada's husband. They're all military veterans, and you see that sort of thing in the military. If you have people, every NCO or every second lieutenant deciding that they don't really care what comes down from senior staff, they're going to go ahead and do things their own way. People get killed, wars get lost. Now, we don't have that situation here, but it's the same concept. So that's what I'm trying to instill here. High visibility and participate in community, charitable, and civic activities. I try to get out as much as I can, not so much because it's just something to do, not so much because I'm always interested in this activity or that activity, or I want to go to this festival. It's to let people know I work for you and I'm out here engaging with you in these sort of public or community activities. I encourage the senior management to participate and seek leadership positions in governmental and professional organizations. That's good, not only so our staff hones their skills and improves their skills and knowledge, but also it's very good for Waushara County. To go back to what I said, I want this county to be the best county in the state. I want this county to be the best county in the state, not just because it's a worthy goal, but also I want it to be looked upon by young people who are looking for a career in government, even if it's only for a couple of years. I want them to come to Waushara County because of our good reputation. I want the benefit of their talent. So that's what we're trying to accomplish there. We establish and maintain strong and cooperative relationships with federal, state, and local government officials. I talked about that a few minutes ago, about going to Washington and the White House. In fact, Supervisor Kapp was in my office on Friday. He didn't necessarily come to see me, but he was in the office and stopped by. And we talked about my trip to Washington. Now, when I went to Washington, I didn't come back with a big check, for this or for that. But what you do is, when you're developing relationships with other units of government or other government officials, it's like your own personal relationships. It takes time to develop them, and you don't know exactly what you may get out of it right now, but in the future, we may need something from Washington. We may have an issue, a veterans issue, or a health and human services issue, or whatever else. And having that relationship with people in the White House or people in Congress enables us to make a telephone call. And I know anybody can make a telephone call at any time, but consider your own personal life. If you have a nephew who needs $2,500 from you, are you going to give that $2,500 to the nephew you haven't heard from in 15, 20 years? Or are you going to give that $2,500 to the nephew that has a regular relationship with you and communicates with you and engages with you? Obviously the latter. So those relationships are something that we work at because it's good for us, particularly because at some point we may need help from somebody in Washington or Madison. We are engaged in the rehabilitation and reform of the county and regional economic development efforts. I know I talk about that a lot, and I know that people may think I'm obsessed with money. Well, I'm obsessed with money because that's what makes this government and the world work. And I'll touch on this, and I don't mean to be a bearer of bad news, but every single demographic trend that we are looking at here in Waushara County is breaking against us. It's not breaking in our favor. Our population is stagnant, perhaps even declining. It's getting older. A lower percentage of our population is participating in the workforce and therefore generating wealth. You may say, well, retirees generate wealth because they go to Stone Ridge and they buy this and they buy that. Yes, they do. But essentially what they're doing is they're living on accumulated wealth. Since they're not working, they're not generating wealth day to day, which is preferable because that has a multiplier effect. Not that I think there's anything wrong with retirees, but you want a young workforce, and our workforce is not young. All right, it's getting older, and a smaller percentage is participating in the workforce. Our population is relatively poor. So what that means, and on top of that, the demand for services increases every year. The mandates from Madison and Washington increase every year. So we're getting squeezed at both ends. We have to spend more money just to maintain the status quo, yet the money that comes in through the natural increase, say, of property valuation, and we are too heavily dependent on property taxes, but that's not something I can do anything about other than lobby people in Madison. But because of that, things get tighter and tighter every year. So the only way to get around that is either just to slash services, to slash staff, or to enhance our tax base through increased economic activity. And that's tough to do even in ideal situations. But at the very least, we shouldn't be making the mistakes we made with Tretzi. So we're addressing that. The other area that we have to address in order to conserve funds and be able to most effectively use them and improve or at least maintain our services is becoming more efficient here. And I am happy to say that I know when departments have come before you and have had reorganization proposals, you've been very supportive of that, and that saves us money as well. Engagement, rapid response to community groups and individuals. We do that even when people are upset. The part of that is that, for instance, the fire chief meeting that we're having at the end of the month, or the tours we take with our townships, our partners there as well. And finally, a proactive rather than a reactive philosophy towards problems and situations. We can't take the attitude that we're just going to sit here and hope for the best, because what's going to happen is people will take us for granted, and they will put the screws to us, or other people will go ahead and get the jump on us and make improvements that we should be making. We've fallen behind in a lot of that. Our present county personnel conditions. Previously, I was talking about county operations. Now I'm talking about the county staff. We're increasing the standards and expectations, not because it's just something I want to do to pad my own ego. We have to do that. We have to become more efficient. We have to become better at what we're doing, because we're not getting a lot of money coming in. We can't go ahead and hire a bunch of staff to do things. We can't farm things out to hire experts in this and that, because we only have so much money, yet the services we have to provide continues to go up. We insist on managers directly managing and being responsible for subordinate employees. I've had some situations where I've had to talk to managers and say, if you're coming to me frequently to have me deal with day-to-day management issues or to deal with problems, you're not making me feel good because you're letting me make the call. What you're doing is you're communicating to me that you cannot do your job. So I want managers to be leaders. I want them to manage. I want them to go ahead and take care of their subordinate employees, and I want them to be responsible for subordinate employees, just as I am responsible for everything that goes on here, and I embrace that responsibility. Likewise, one of the reasons why you had a culture where managers would come to the top person and say, what should I do here, what should I do there, is because they were afraid what to do. They were afraid that if they made a mistake, their head would roll. And I've told them that they can go ahead and try new things. They know their business better than I do. If they think they can do something better a different way, let's go ahead and give it a try. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. I just want them to learn from it, and we're not going to go ahead and take somebody's head off. And I'll go ahead and take the heat if there is any. I want the staff to engage in critical thought and a cost-benefit analysis prior to making decisions. I don't want decisions to be made with the eye on, what do I have to do to get through today? What do I have to do to get through this week, this month, this year? What do I have to do to get through until I can retire and get out of here? I want people to think things through, and I want them to look at not only the cost, but what are we getting for the cost? That ties back to what I was talking about with the cell phone rule. Yes, we saved a few dollars by not allowing the employees to go ahead and plug in their cell phone, but what it cost us was a hell of a lot, because we had very disgruntled employees, and I know at least one employee left because of that rule. Frequent, direct, and unambiguous communication. We're talking about Donald Trump at the White House. One of the things about Donald Trump that perhaps you Midwesterners don't understand is that a lot of people in the Northeast, particularly in New York or Philadelphia, where I come from, they'll go ahead and tell you to your face. They won't be. They'll criticize you to your face. They won't be coy about it. And I know that sometimes I am painfully honest, painfully blunt with some of you, and I know it ruffles feathers, but I do so because I want you to understand what I'm trying to communicate, or where I'm being critical, or what I want you to do. I don't seek to embarrass anybody publicly, but behind closed doors or in private communications, I am going to tell it like it is, so that there isn't a situation where you're not aware of what I'm trying to communicate, or you're not aware of my feelings on something. And I want you to reciprocate as well. Our hiring and promotion decisions now are made solely on objective talent, standards of talent, and ability. About 8 months ago, I chewed out the directors because we had a situation where somebody was in a position they should have never been in. We need to go ahead and look at the job. And again, that goes back to expectations are different for people depending upon their responsibilities and their job. I don't want people hired because they're someone's relative. I've been told, well, we should hire that person because he or she knows the area. Well, you know, I'm not hiring cab drivers. I really don't care if they know the area. They can figure out the roads and where this and that is. Any even moderately intelligent person could do that. What I'm looking for is leadership ability. I'm looking for people who can manage people. We have to get away from the idea that if somebody's been here for a long period of time, they somehow, through osmosis, have absorbed managerial and leadership abilities. That's often not the case. I want to create an engaging and fulfilling workplace. I can't compete with the private sector as far as money. I can't even, for the most part, compete with some of the folks in the public sector. Here in Waushara County, our competition as far as jobs is not other rural areas. Our competition is Oshkosh and the Fox Cities, where the eastern half of our population goes to work and shop. The western side, they get on 39 and they go up to Point or Rapids, or even sometimes as far as Waushara. That's who we're competing against, and we're having difficulty doing that. So what we can improve and what we can sell to people is we can go ahead and have an engaging workplace where they can come to work here and say, this is going to be good for my career. This is not just a job. This is a place where I can really let loose and do the things that I want. I want young, idealistic people, people who are altruistic, who want to go to work in government because they want to help people. I don't want them coming into a place where they say, oh my God, I can't plug my cell phone in. Is this the place where I want to work? So I'm trying to change that. And also I'm trying to change the attitude towards recruitment and retention of talent. We have to accept the fact here that we are a farm club for the most part for larger jurisdictions, but that's okay. If you get a superstar here, a young superstar that you only have for 3, 5, 6 years, and they move on to bigger and better things, that's okay. I still want them for those 3, 5, 6 years, and I want the benefit of their talent. I will tell you, I would much rather have 5 people over the course of 25 years filling a position who are top-notch people who move on to bigger and better things than a mediocre person who's going to be there for 25 years and never leave. So that's what I'm trying to do here as well. Where are we going? And in this situation, what I want to emphasize is where we're going is not necessarily dependent upon me, because despite the fact that I have the authority to manage this county, I don't necessarily have the ultimate authority of where we go. What I mean by that is as I said earlier, you can decide I need to take a hike and leave. You can also decide what we do and what we don't do. Ultimately, the things that I do around here have to get your approval. And if we're not on the same page, we're going to be spinning our wheels and we're going to be locked in needless conflict. So this is what I need from you going forward for us to reach those goals we want to reach. I need you to get an increased understanding for Wisconsin law governing this form of government, the administrative form of government. I will tell you, every year in September, the Wisconsin Counties Association has an annual seminar, and I know some of you have jobs, but I'm going to ask Ms. Kapp to send out the dates for this September, so that if you do have a job, I'd like you to make an effort to clear your calendar for those days and attend that conference. And I think it's at the Dells again this year. When I have John Hockemer come here later on this year, I want you to go ahead and pay attention to what he has to say and ask questions, because that's how you learn. If you don't understand, if you don't have an understanding of how this form of government works, we are going to constantly be in conflict because you may want to do something that you can't do, or exercise authority that you don't have. I want you to have increased respect for the boundary between management, which is what I and the staff are responsible for, and policy formulation, which is what you are responsible for. We prepare the budget for your consideration, but ultimately you go ahead and you decide how much money goes to where. And as I think it was Robert Frost who said, good fences make good neighbors. And if we stay on our side of responsibility, I think we would have a much more productive relationship. I need increased communication and feedback. I communicate with you incessantly. I communicate with you every Sunday night. As I said earlier, my communication with you is painfully honest. I get very little feedback. I have a few of you who come into my office and engage me and complain, but that's okay. But most of you don't. Now, if it's a situation where you're just happy with everything, that's fine. You don't have to come in and make me feel better by talking to me. But if you're upset about something, I need to hear about it. And the reason why I bring that up is on my tour of town boards and governments, I was at the Marion Town Board a few months ago, and the town board chair had said that he received a complaint that I was making all the decisions and there was no need for the county board. I don't make all the decisions, I make all the management decisions, but if that's a problem, you need to tell me. I shouldn't be hearing that from a third person. So you need to talk to me if there's any problems. I need you to be committed to long-term planning and problem solving. Again, we've got to get out of this rut we're in where we just live for the day and we let the people tomorrow worry about tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to come, next year is going to come, next decade's going to come. Even if we're dead, we owe it to the future to get this place whipped into shape so that they don't have to deal with problems that we could solve now. Because if as problems as problems are unresolved, they fester, they get worse, and they get more expensive. So let's be committed to taking care of things today, so that decades from now, people yet not yet born will be grateful to us for that. I want us to be committed to standards and expectations of excellence regarding not only our operations but our personnel. I want us to make reform necessary when it will improve county operations. I mentioned Tretzi earlier. I was shocked that was allowed to go on for as long as it was, and I was shocked that everybody was involved, knew there were problems, but nobody ever did anything. And I was most shocked when I went ahead and did something at the pushback I received, when what I was doing was actually in the public's interest and taking care of things that should have been addressed more than a decade before. I want you to be committed to a proactive culture and addressing problems or potential problems. Problems don't take care of themselves, so if we have a situation and we have a solution, let's do it. We can't expect that everything we do is going to make people happy. If you try to make everybody happy, you'll end up making no one happy. I want you to have the courage and self-confidence to be competent enough to know when you're incompetent. That's a mantra I repeat to the staff all the time. I'm competent enough to know when I'm incompetent. And the real-world application of that is I don't go out to the highway department and harangue them about what they're doing with the roads. Why? I don't know. I don't know anything about maintaining roads. I don't know the most effective way to plow snow. Now, I do know this. If I'm driving on the roads this summer and there's holes all over the place, it looks like the place had been shelled, I know something's wrong and I need to talk to Brian about that. Likewise, if I see that the snow is not getting plowed, I need to talk to Brian about that. But I go ahead and I let people that we hire to do things to do their job. And I want you to let the staff do their job and to let me do their job, let me do my job. And again, if you think that I'm not doing my job, I want you to go ahead and exercise your authority to replace me or to change the form of government so that you can go ahead and manage. That way, we know where we stand and we can move forward. And I want you to always place the public interest above your own. I place the public's interest above my own, and the proof of that is, if I was interested primarily in my own self-interest, I wouldn't be working as hard as I am. I wouldn't be irritating you the way I do. I wouldn't be irritating the staff by pushing them to get better. Because in government, as a public official, whether you're elected or appointed, you can never do a good job if your primary concern is keeping that job. And my experience in local government management on the city and the county level is probably 2/3 to 3/4 of city and county managers in this country really don't do much other than to try to protect themselves. And as a result of that they want to keep their job, and because of that, progress is not made, and you fall into a rut where you fall further and further behind. And then you're either going to address the problem when somebody comes in and does so, or you're going to address the problem when it's a crisis situation and an enormous amount of damage has been done, an enormous amount of money has to be expended. So quote I want you to think about as we move forward over the next couple of years. It's going to be hard, but hard does not mean impossible. And I want you to understand that the work we have to do here is not easy. It's hard, but the public deserves it. So let's get on the same page. Later on this year, we'll decide whether or not I'm going to stay here, but I want you to think about that, and I want feedback from you. If you're not happy with the direction I'm taking the county in, let me know, and you can reconfigure what you want to do as far as management of the county, and I can reconfigure what I want to do as far as my career. So let's talk to each other. Let's decide where we're in sync and where we're not in sync, and it doesn't need to be personal, but we need to be moving in the right direction or we're not going to go anywhere. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Very well. I thank you for your time and attention. I yield the floor back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, next we are going to discussion and possible motion action items. The first one is the 2020 fire wardens as proposed by Department of Natural Resources, and that was in your package, but just in case you forgot, it's Wade Pinau in the town of Wautoma. He's at Wautoma Rental. In the town of Poisippi, it's Barb Medell, and she is at Medell's Lanes in Poisippi. In town of Wild Rose is Dana Lesniak, and she is at the Wild Rose Convenience Store. So I will entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Eckstein, second by Mr. Lauer. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, next we have a consideration of possible action on the following resolutions and ordinances. Resolution number 0101-20, a resolution in support of a second circuit court judge for Waushara County. Motion by Mr. Kirschner, second by Mr. Kapp. Do you have any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Next, we have ordinance number 645, an ordinance amending ordinance number 623, Waushara County 20-year comprehensive plan, Waushara County, Wisconsin. I have a motion. Motion by Mr. Peterman. Second by Mr. Tim. Do you have any questions? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ordinance number 646, an ordinance amending Waushara County Code number 22. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Peterman. Second by Mr. Eckstein. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we have an appointments to the Transportation Coordinating Committee. Mike Davis from Wautoma. The term is February 1st, 2020 through May 31st, 2023. And the next is Roger Charette from Wautoma. The term is June 1st, 2020 through May 31st, 2023. Greg Erickson, Wautoma, term June 1st, 2020 through May 31st, 2023. Motion by Mr. Jarvis, second by Mr. Lauer. Do you have any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Board suggestions for future agenda items?
Adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Eckstein to adjourn, second by Mr. Tim. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Did I miss them?